What are we doing in the black community? The number one consumer of a Mercedes-Benz
It's us.
us. The number one consumer of a Gucci and a Louis Vuitton, us. And they don't even advertise. Why is it that in the black community, we are always the number one consumer, but we're not the number one creators?
So you just said it. The fact that there's consumers and creators. For so long, we assume success based on consumption.
Welcome to Closing the Gap Podcast, Truth About Black Wealth. I am the co-host, Mr. Eddie Richardson, here with our host, founder, Hamilton Wealth Advisors, Mr. Wilbert Hamilton. How you doing today, brother?
Blessed and highly favored.
Amen, amen. Yes, indeed. We are just continuing, try to give you what you need today. Thank you for tuning in to V94.9. And also, we tune in to our YouTube channel at Closing the Gap, The Truth. Also, you can find this podcast on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. You can find Closing the Gap podcast, where we try to give you the truth about black wealth. And today, we want to talk about success and how to secure your success. And in this financial segment, Mr. Hamilton, can you tell us about what are the key components to having a successful retirement plan?
Absolutely. You know, the craziest thing is most people, you know, when they think of retirement plan, they think of just retirement. They don't really think about, like I say, all the things that kind of go into making it successful. Just like anything else, it's always, you know, they say it's more than one way to skin a cat. It's always, you know, more than one way to create success. But, you know, if you can combine multiple components into things, you know, kind of like, you know, like losing weight, you know, you can eat better and you can work out and you can get some sleep. And all those things in conjunction, when you put them all together, they help to fast track that weight loss. So we're trying to take bone advice too. We're trying to do some of that as well. So we want to be healthier and wealthy. So, but from a income plan and retirement planning standpoint, there's, like I say, multiple areas that we kind of have to dive into to make sure that retirement is successful. One of the most important parts is income planning. Okay. You know, there's also, of course, tax plan. Of course, the tax code changes very often, and we have a lot of noise around the IRS and tax code, and you know, cuts and things that consistently go in, and you know how this particular administration obviously is trying to affect the tax liability for all of us, and also legacy planning. That last piece is, you know, one of the pieces that, you know, people like to kind of jump to. They like to go from investment planning right into kind of legacy planning and what they're gonna leave. And I tell people, I say, well, if you ain't got a solid retirement plan, it won't be a legacy plan. It ain't gonna be nothing to leave if you ain't made sure you got enough to survive until you get to that particular point in time. So making sure you don't skip steps. You know, unfortunately, of course, we like to, you know, we want to fast track, we want to microwave everything, and sometimes you got to slow cook that thing. You know, you got to take your time and really dive into it and make sure you know, add the right amount of seasoning, and you know, you want to have the right portion of meat, and you want to have all the different things where you can, you know, cook it for the right amount of time, you know, to make sure that, you know, those juices and those seasons really absorb into that meat. So let it marinate, you know. So, you know, we need that retirement plan to marinate. Okay. You know, we need to marinate in the income planning, tax planning, and then the legacy planning. And, you know, we're definitely going to dive into kind of each one of those a little bit to show you why those areas are definitely important.
Okay. So we want to get everything in. We have these three phases of key components of a successful retirement plan: income planning, tax planning, and legacy planning. So could you explain to us what exactly is an income plan?
Now, an income plan is probably, I mean, I don't like to say it's the most important part, but it's probably the most important part. Okay. It's the phase of the plan. We want to make sure we don't run out of money. We want to make sure we have income. So, you know, of course, on the previous episode, we talked about the difference between retirement and investment. Retirement is what I need to maintain my standard of living for the rest of my life, and investment what I got left over after I've secured that. Okay. Well, income planning is what gives us that sustainability. It's making sure that we're going to have income, making sure that we can pay our bills consistently from here to kingdom come. So it's making sure we evaluate, okay, what is your Social Security? You know, when should you take Social Security? You know, if you're a woman, you can actually draw from your husband's Social Security. Even if you're divorced from that husband, if that husband is passed away, you know, you can actually draw off of that particular income. And those things were put in place, you know, years ago for a lot of housewives.
Okay.
You know, that would, of course, the homemaker that would stay in the home, husband's out working, being the breadwinner, so to speak. Wife was at home taking care of the family, taking care of the kids, running the house. And if something were to happen to the husband, the wife would be left in a situation where, she technically doesn't have any income. She wouldn't have any Social Security because she hasn't paid anything into the system, but she's been working a full-time job for her entire life, essentially. So they allowed for them to actually be able to draw off of the husband's Social Security to be able to receive a benefit of income. So, making sure you understand Social Security and how it works. There are a lot of misconceptions about Social Security. Actually, one of the most ironic statistics that, we were facing, somewhat of a shortfall. And everybody's heard about the trouble that the Social Security system is having. And, Social Security is going to run out of money. And it's not really going to run out of money. What they mean is really there was an overfunding of Social Security for a large period of time. We had previous generations where, years ago when life expectancy was only about, just say, 66 years of age. And people worked until they were 65. And they had put all this money into the Social Security system their entire work career. But then, of course, they weren't living long enough to enjoy those benefits. So then you have the baby boom generation come along and they made some adjustments to Social Security to say, you know what, we want to give people a little bit more reprieve. We're going to lower the age to 62.
Okay.
So, but at that time when they initially did it, you still had a huge and the largest, number of people in the workforce. So you had a lot of people putting in, not as many people taking back out. So what has happened is that kind of flipped on its head a little bit when all the baby boomer generation starting to retire. So now we have more people pulling out of the system than what we necessarily have putting back into the system. And that's what created the fear of us running out of the overage that we had in Social Security, that extra that we had that was going into things. So what they meant was if we stayed on course, because of the reduced age at which you could start Social Security, what was going to happen was Social Security is probably going to have to reduce the benefit amount. It didn't mean that Social Security is going to disappear altogether.
Okay.
What it meant is that if we don't make any adjustments, we're going to probably have a reduction in Social Security benefits by about 25%. Now, we have to understand the role and responsibility of Social Security from the beginning. Unfortunately, Social Security, in a lot of ways, has become a crutch in our community. It was never designed to be a replacement of income. It was always designed to be a supplement.
Okay.
So you have to look at retirement planning kind of like a stool. And a stool has multiple legs to create success. Social Security was one of those legs.
Okay.
You also had your pension was one of those legs. 401k became one of those legs. And your own individual savings is one of those legs. Now, you take any one of those legs away, then that chair gets a little wobbly. It might still stand, but it ain't going to be on level ground. You're going to be leaning and overcompensating in one way, shape, form, or fashion.
That's true.
And ironically, with COVID happening and so many Americans passing away, that actually has benefited the Social Security system because there are fewer people they're paying out to. And it automatically just had an adverse or a beneficial effect for this particular generation. So, there were, I don't want to say some good that came out of that, but that from a Social Security benefit standpoint, that is one thing that has been affected. And, one of the things they could do at any particular point in time, and there's always something going on with the government. There's always a plight in some way, shape, form, or fashion. I'm saying we're going to run out of money. We need to make cuts. We need to make adjustments. If they simply remove the age from 62 and pushed it back up to 65, they eliminate the threat of Social Security running out of money. So there's always some small adjusted things they can make. I would tell people, the media is meant to create emotion and evoke action. So never get too high and too low. Always stay even keel, but that's why we go back to the planning and making sure we have that in place and not letting the news scare you and thinking my Social Security is going to be taken away.
Understood.
You paid into a system is going to be there. So, from that standpoint, we understand that. That is a part of the income planning phase. We have to understand how pensions, of course, have worked. And we see pension plans have been disappearing. Fewer companies have pension plans. The reason why they got away from was that pension plans create a lot of liability for companies. If you mismanage your money, it's your fault. If they mismanage your money, they're held liable. So what companies started doing is say, you know what? We want to get away from having the cost of having to manage your pension. and also the liability that came with managing that pension. And we're going to turn more to a 401k system. We wanted, the federal government said, we got to find a way to maybe to absorb a little bit more taxes from people. We want to, put the ball back in their court and put the onus on them, because guess what? If you don't put into a 401k, most companies won't match your 401k. So now all of a sudden the company is saving a little bit of money. Okay. Instead of with that pension system, they automatically mandated to put that matching contribution in there. Well, with a 401k, most likely, if you're not putting in, they're not putting in. They're going to match you based on a certain percentage.
Okay.
Now, there are a few companies that put in regardless, but a lot of them have started making those adjustments. If you're not contributing, we're not contributing. So along with them trying to save money and understanding that most people don't think about tomorrow till tomorrow gets here, it's helped them in a lot of ways. And it's made it so much more important for the average person to have some type of financial literacy training, because it's automatically puts you in responsible and puts you in charge of your retirement. So if you have a 401k on the job and you don't have a pension, most people say, well, man, Mr. Hamilton, I don't make enough to save for retirement. Well, I tell them, you ain't gonna never retire. Either you're gonna take the bull by the horns and start making some necessary adjustments in your life,
Correct.
or somebody else is gonna do it for you. So, the one thing we understand about life, they tell you all the time, either you working towards your dreams or you helping to build somebody else's. So having that income planning, doing that, having the Social Security, having a pension, having 401k, and then understanding, how those things kind of work together to create some success.
Got it. Okay. All right. So key component. That's key component number one, income planning. I like how you gave that analogy of having those legs. And so Social Security being a leg, pension plan being a leg, 401k, IRA, some type of brokerage account, or Roth IRAs, those things. It makes a lot of sense, because I think I've seen, where many people have been saying, I can't wait till I can get to the point and I can take my Social Security, right?
Yes.
And then we wonder why we're struggling, and because we don't have that balance. We didn't balance ourselves out ahead of time. And so that's why we're coming on here on V94.9 and explaining these types of things from your vantage point, being a financial advisor. And so we advise you all that come and see Mr. Hamilton at Hamilton Wealth Advisors, or seek out some type of professional financial advice to make sure that you have a solid foundation to stand on for your retirement, to have a successful retirement plan. And don't just depend on one thing, because when you do, then you end up hopping around on a pogo stick.
Absolutely.
And not being able to have a solid table or chair foundation. So also in those key components, you got income planning, and then could we talk about tax planning? What is it that we need to understand, or the people need to understand about tax planning when it comes to successful retirement planning?
Anything that comes in, something's gonna have to go back out. First and foremost, that we live in a system where, there's no such thing as something for nothing.
Okay.
So the government has created those 401k systems, those 403bs, 457s. If you work for the federal government, it's called a TSP. Well, all of them operate the same. Even IRA falls under that category from being what we call a qualified retirement plan, which basically means any qualified account, every dollar that you pull back out of the account during retirement is going to be taxed to you as ordinary income. So it's very important to understand not just how to make the money, but how do the distributions work, to understand how to utilize the money. So a lot of times we get focused, and people talk to me all the time, well, Mr. Hamilton, I need to make some money, And we do need to make some money. We do need to invest the money and grow the money properly. But we also got to understand how the money is going to work on the other end. We need to factor and understand how much is going to actually hit my hand. So when we do planning, and I come in and I evaluate a situation, I do a financial plan for a client, I'm going to factor and calculate what is the after-tax dollar amount that's going to hit your hand, because that's what you pay bills with.
Okay.
It's not the gross, it's the net. So we need to know what the net amount is going to be that I can live on. And the only way to do that is have proper tax planning as a part of your retirement planning process. You have to understand, how is the 401k tax? How is the Roth taxed? How is my pension tax? What sources of income are not taxable? So understanding how those things work together is what's going to give me the greatest opportunity for success. And it also will tell me while I'm working, what opportunities do I need to fund the most? Where do I need to put my dollars to maximize the benefit? And it's the situation where what you putting your money in today may not be the best thing to give you the greatest amount of success for tomorrow. So, give an example.
All right.
If you're 40 years of age
Okay.
and you got kids in the house, you got a mortgage, you have the most tax benefits while your kids are young in the house, you have a mortgage, and you're growing and trying to save and get to retirement. People have this assumption that when I get to retirement, I'm going to be in a lower tax bracket. Theoretically, I hear a lot of advisors, people say, oh man, you work to retirement, you get to retirement, you're going to be in a lower tax bracket, you're going to be able to reduce your income. No. Who works their entire life to make less money in retirement than they did when they was working?
Now the goal is really we really want to be making more.
You want to be making more.
Or at least at that same clip.
And if you've done any kind of planning, any kind of saving along the way consistently over time, what happens is you put it to a 401k, you may have some variation of a pension, even if it's reduced variation, you have some variance of a pension, you have some type of 401k system, then you have Social Security. So all these incomes start coming in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is usually when you get to be 60, 65, you got the kids out the house. The goal is everybody want the house paid for. I ain't got no debt. Well, guess what? You also ain't got no tax breaks either. Wow. So every dollar you go to start pulling from that pension plan, the dollars you get from that 401k, all those things are taxed to you as ordinary income.
Wow.
Now, and based on how much that money is, a portion of your Social Security will be taxed as income as well. So when you bring all these things together, yes, you're living good, but then I have people all the time, Mr. Hamilton, I'm paying more in taxes now than I did when I was working. I said, well, the difference is when you was working, you was able to put some money into that 401k, and it was a dollar for dollar deduction up to a certain amount. It was a tax break. Now you on the other side of that thing, and you have the pay the tax. So the government says, look, a 401k for them, it's a cash advance. That's basically what it is. They're allowing you to write off and make a deduction today. And they're saying, look, we ain't going to charge you nothing on that right now, because the government don't want the taxes on the $500 a month or the $300 a month or the $200 a month you put into your 401k. They want you to do that for the entirety of your work career. So when you retire and you're now 65, and now they see you've amassed $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 in your 401k because you saved and invested, they're saying, you know what? We want the tax dollars on the back end. We don't want the $200,000-$300,000. We want the taxes on that $300,000-$400,000. So it's a game of them understanding we are a community that we want to get by today and worry about tomorrow when it gets here. And we want to do the proper planning up front to understand. It says, do I need to fund more of a Roth account where I won't have to pay any income tax down the road? Is it better to fund that more than fund the 401k? Is it better to use some forms of life insurance to fund my retirement as opposed to a 401k? Or exactly how much do I need to fund my 401k in order to make sure I get all the free money that my company is giving me? Right. And then everything else move into other less taxed opportunities, because a brokerage account is an after-tax account where you only pay capital gains taxes. Okay. You don't pay income taxes. Okay. Capital gains taxes are less than income taxes. You only pay the difference on the gain. So if I invested $500 and I made $500, I got $1,000 in the account. I only pay capital gains on what? The $500. If I put $500 into a 401k and that $500 turns to $1,000, when I take that $1,000 out, I'm paying taxes on the whole $1,000. So the tax liability, we have to understand how to manage, how to maneuver. I always tell people, it's not tax avoidance. You don't want tax evasion. You want tax avoidance. You want to understand the system. Now, you go to jail for tax evasion. Right. But their TPAs are there to help you avoid certain things and put you in a better situation.
So it's basically just putting together a good plan around it will help you lessen your tax burden.
Absolutely.
In the beginning, while we're working, we put up a successful retirement plan that helps us avoid a lot of taxes ahead of time, and also ensures that we will have a certain amount of money and be able to live a certain lifestyle that we desire once we retire.
Absolutely.
And then once we retire, we have a set income and a set tax strategy about it. So we're going to go to commercial, and then once we come back from the commercial, I want to talk about some legacy plan.
Okay.
All right. See you shortly. Welcome back to Closing the Gap Podcast, Truth About Black Wealth. I am your co-host, Mr. Eddie Richardson, here with our host and founder of Hamilton Wealth Advisors, Mr. Wilbur Hamilton. And so you are tuned in to WATV B94.9 on your radio. And also you can find us on YouTube at Closing the Gap, The Truth. Closing the Gap, The Truth on YouTube. And find us anywhere that you get your podcast streams on Apple, Spotify, and the like. So we want to get back in, Mr. Hamilton. We're talking about today about successful retirement plan. We talked about income planning. We talked about tax planning. We talked about having a good foundation under us of Social Security, pension, 401k, IRA, brokerage, having a balanced plan in our income. But then also knowing that, okay, while we're able to defer taxes on the front end, we also, in order to have a successful retirement plan, need to take into account that the IRS and the government wants a piece of that money.
Absolutely.
In the beginning, but also once we retire, they want to tax that money that we're going to be taking out of whatever financial vehicle that we've set ourselves up for.
Absolutely.
And so I appreciate you for explaining that to us today. Now, if we could, what is this thing called legacy plan? And I've heard things about that, and that word legacy being, something long-term, something passed down. Could you give us a better explanation for myself and our listeners?
Absolutely. I mean, the legacy planning piece really is, for me, the motivation and why I do what I do. Okay. My passion is to teach my community how to create generational wealth. So in order for me to do that, I got to help make you some money along the way. But then obviously we got to transition some to the future generations to make sure we can, leave them in a better situation than what we came in. And there's a couple of things I want to add to make sure that our listening audience understands. I think they're going to be key points, especially with some things that are going on right now. Okay. In society with a lot of the layoffs, and all the, basically, of course, companies, whether it's DEI firings, whether it's legitimate, downsizing by the federal government, whatever it may be, there's going to be a lot of chaos. And if you don't seek financial advice, there's some mistakes that can be made. And I see them happen all too often when there's transition happening and people don't seek financial help. One of the biggest things that people need to understand is that when you're under 59 and a half, and we've seen it happen a lot of times, and people change jobs. Okay. The 401k that you had at your previous employer, you can now move that into your own personal IRA. What a lot of people don't understand and they miss is how that money is taxed, because they've never been through that situation before. Anytime you pull money out of a retirement account, a qualified plan prior to 59 and a half, you not only have to pay income taxes on that account in those funds, but also there's additional 10% penalty placed on you by the IRS. So those are things that people need to understand before they go make these decisions, start pulling money out. And if you have to pull out, and we understand life happens to everybody, and if you got to take something out, you got to do what you got to do, but take out the minimum amount. Don't pull out lump sums. I see all too many mistakes happen when people retire or they transition, and the first thing we think about, man, I want to pay off all my bills. If I get all my bills out the way, then man, I'll be okay. And I got, $40,000 left on my mortgage. I got a car that's $25,000, and all of a sudden they see they got a 401k they have access to now that's $150,000. And they'll say, man, I'm gonna go ahead and pay off everything. Not understanding, in order to get $60,000 for that guy who's, let's just say, 50 years of age. All right. If the house payoff is 40 and the car payoff is 20, that's 60,000. We need 60,000 after tax. Now, if that's 60,000 in income and he's made some other income, let's say he makes 40,000 for the year, that turns into $100,000 in taxable income for the year. We have to look to see what tax bracket are you in based on that 100,000. We'll go and take out the money, not understanding that, guess what? This 60 is going to be counted against you as taxable income. Then you're under 59 and a half. So unless you file for a hardship, you have an additional 10% penalty under IRS guidelines. So that if we just do the math on that, if you hit a 22% tax bracket,
Right.
now what's an additional 10% penalty gives you a 32% tax bracket. So on that $100,000 you took out, you only netted 68,000, and we ain't factoring in state taxes. Now Alabama's another 5%. So in order to get that, you just cost yourself $100,000 to pay off $60,000 worth of stuff. Now we have to ask ourselves, is it worth it? That home, that's most people's biggest tax break. Outside of if they're maxing out and putting as much as they can into retirement accounts. That interest on that home is a deduction for you.
So is it really beneficial to pay it off early or keep the note going and just utilize the money that you have in a retirement plan to make the payments? Because now we're talking about calculating interest. Because the interest on that house is going to be much less than that 32%.
Exactly. Because I tell people, all debt is not bad debt, but unfortunately, sometimes we have this thing, especially in our community, where I don't want no bills. I want everything paid off, and that's fine, and that was great for previous generations. But understanding how to use and leverage debt is how a lot of our entrepreneurs have become wealthy, especially in real estate. All debt is not bad debt. Now we don't want the additional credit card debts, and you don't want to have too many cars that you can't pay for it. Debt is only a problem when you bought stuff you can't afford.
Understood.
But we want to make sure that we're buying within our means. So if anything ever happens, we've properly planned and we can maintain those things. So understanding how taxes are going to affect us, good and bad, is key and essential. Also, one thing that our listening audience needs to understand, if you are 73 years of age, there's a thing called required minimum distributions. It's called RMD. It's referred to as RMDs. When you get to a certain age, that's what the federal government has put in the age limit that says, look, I don't care whether you want to or not. You have to start taking money out of your qualified retirement accounts because we want our tax dollars back. They literally send you a letter at the beginning of every year saying this is the required minimum distribution amount that you have to take out this year because we want our tax dollars. The penalty for not taking out a distribution is up to 50% of your account value. So if you got $100,000 in a retirement account and you 73, you have a minimum amount you have to take out. It's probably going to be around 3.3, 3.5%.
All right.
So it's either you take out that $3,300 or face a penalty of $50,000.
Definitely taking the 30.
But a lot of people don't understand because they're making these decisions on their own. They're doing things. They're not seeking the professional help. So I tell people, the day you need a financial advisor is the day you start working because it's going to affect you today. It's going to affect you tomorrow. And it's going to affect you into when you get to that point in time where a lot of us get to 65, you go into them golden years. And now you're thinking about, you got some grandkids running around. You start thinking about the legacy. See, most people don't think about the legacy until the legacy gets here. And we want to start thinking about, man, how we want to be remembered. Well, how you've done your financial planning will dictate the legacy that you leave, because I can tell you first and foremost, if you don't leave them no money, there's a lower likelihood that they're going to remember you. That's just the facts. That's just how things work. And unfortunately, that's the way things are. If you leave people in a better situation financially, the last memory of you is going to be good. I don't care what happened throughout life. They're like, you know what? He was a pain in the butt for a long time. But you know what? He sure left us in a better situation.
Yes, sir.
He sure left an inheritance to his children. He sure did something for his family. So them words at that funeral going to be real good with everybody know them pockets are sitting real nice. And he's left us in a better situation than when he found us. And that's what we have to do. A lot less crying. We always hear those jokes about, why do other communities' funerals not be the same way our funerals will be? There's a lot of crying and hooting and hollering now, and theirs, it's a lot more serene. It seems like they can handle the loss a little bit better. Well, if you just inherited $1 million, you might handle that loss a little bit better too.
Yeah,
I ain't saying that it ain't gonna hurt.
Yeah,
it gonna
hurt, but your pockets feel.
Hey, like Future say, you want to cry in that Toyota, you don't even want to cry in this Rolls Royce. Which one you want to do? We gotta understand that money does affect and change things. It's not everything. but it's a tool and resource to put us in a better situation. And if we don't do the income planning, the tax planning properly, you won't leave a legacy to be able to do any legacy planning with.
Wow. That's good. So we're talking about income tax, capital gains tax, 59.5 rule, and required minimum distribution.
Yes, sir.
And when you say all that, what we want you all to understand, our listeners and viewers on YouTube, and those of you that are viewing on YouTube, please like, share, subscribe, and invite somebody else to know. And also on the radio, tell somebody else about this. Tune in. Tell somebody else to tune in the mornings. So what we want you to realize is that you need to seek wise counsel in everything that you do. As Mr. Hamilton stated, you need a plan once you start working. So really, we need to start informing children when they are 14, 15.
Absolutely.
Time they start getting into the workforce, we need to make these things known. But there's a saying that says the best time to plant a tree was yesterday and today.
Absolutely.
So it doesn't matter what age you are right now. We're striving to give you this information that you can use it for whatever state of life you're in, whatever, however your finances are right now. Utilize this information to go out and seek wise counsel, such as Mr. Hamilton, and with financial planning, but then also finding a good tax strategist or CPA that understands the tax code, because it's something that we need to realize when you were talking about the different percentages and brackets that you are in. We need to understand that the tax code does not stay the same each and every year. That not every year just about it changes, or it has the ability to change, and especially when you get a new administration come in, they seek to set the tax code in different ways to benefit different sects of people and different income levels of people. So it's important that when you get a CPA or get a tax strategist or anybody that you use to file your taxes, make sure that they are truly informed with the new tax codes, the up-to-date tax codes for this year. And that's how you will be able to have successful retirement plans and successful tax planning, and then also leave a legacy and an inheritance to your children and your children's children, because that's what we want. We want success in our community. And this is why we are here on Closing the Gap, the truth about Black wealth. We're striving to give you the honest truth about your wealth, being African Americans in this community, but also this information is good for everyone. No matter where you are in your lot in life, you can utilize this information to succeed and go where you go. So we've been talking about planning a whole lot this year, right? We've been talking about making sure that you get good information, and not only striving to get people to come and patronize your business, but we do want the people to know that we're not on this radio show or on the YouTube just for, just to talk. No, we are here because we want you to be successful. And we are here because Mr. Hamilton does his work well. So we want you to seek him out, set up your consultation to get your financial status looked at, to be able to set your plan in place for you, where you are in your life. We have president is here. He has Elon Musk doing his thing. He has his Doge. He has all these things going on. Now, while Doge is doing what it is doing, you need to get a strategy how you can dodge some of the things that are going on. And so we implore you to come and see Mr. Hamilton, seek out his advice, set up a consultation today so that you can get a successful plan. Because also, as we talk about successful retirement plans, Mr. Hamilton, looking at income tax planning, tax planning, legacy planning, what we realize is that that's our whole estate.
Mm-hmm.
That really encompasses everything of who we are. So a successful retirement plan leads to good estate planning. And Can you touch on that for a moment?
Yeah. I mean, we all, like I say, a righteous man leaves his heritage to his children. And if you do any one of those things incorrectly, or if you just miss any one of those things, everything that you worked or built can be dismantled in the blink of an eye. If you don't have income plan, and I see it all too often, especially right now. Everybody's been investing, doing their own investing. Everybody thinks they understand how to invest. Everybody's on Facebook and Instagram and think they're day trading and think they know how to manage the market and know what stocks to buy, what mutual funds to buy, and all this kind of good stuff. So, I look and laugh a lot just at the comments and some of the things that are going on a day-to-day basis. So if you make one wrong step or you invest your assets improperly, and we have a swift downturn, you can go from having your retirement dreams turn into a retirement nightmare. We witnessed it in 2008. We saw it happen again with the flash crash and when COVID hit initially and the market drop. People that were ready to retire and in a position to retire all of a sudden lost 25 and 30 and 40, 50% of their income because they were invested in properly, because they were doing it themselves thinking they knew how to do and what to do and then when to do. When you don't know what to do, when to do, and how to do. And more importantly, you don't have access to enough information. And even if you have access to the information, one thing I tell people is that I have access to products that you ain't got access to. You may know what I know, but you still can't do what I do because you don't have access. Access is key. So if you make a misstep there, automatically things have changed in your life. You went from saying you was going to live on $50,000 a year, and all of a sudden your retirement investments is cut in half, and now you got to live on $25,000. How does that work? People always say, well, my advisor I got tells me, don't worry about it. Stay in there, hold on, it's going to come back. Well, guess what? Money can come back if you lose it. But what can't come back is the time that it's going to take for you to make that money back. The difference is when you're in retirement, you're making distributions. And most people say they'll have the rule of 4% or 5%, as you're probably closer to 3.5% now based on interest rates. But people have this rule of thumb they used to go by. A lot of advisors, they'll tell you, well, we're going to live on 5% of your portfolio. Well, if you got $1 million, what's 5% of your portfolio? That's $50,000. Now, I just said $1 million. Now, not a lot of people got $1 million in their portfolio. But let's go ahead and break this thing down, and I want to give y'all some real game here and understand how this money works. So if you got $1 million in a 401k account, and you living on that 5% rule, which most people go by a 4% rule now. But I'm going to be nice and give you 5%.
All right.
That's $50,000. Now, we just talked about the tax liability that we have inside of a retirement account. When you take out that 5%, you got $50,000. Now that $50,000 got to get taxed as ordinary income. So what is your net gain from this $1 million portfolio now? That's probably about $38,000 after tax. So now you saw $1 million in your account. So I promise you, most people ain't thinking I'm going to get $38,000 a year as what my livable income is going to be out of this portfolio. Now, what we don't account for is all of a sudden, 2008 happens. People are overly aggressive and overly optimistic far too often when it comes to their investment portfolios and don't do nearly enough reassessment on the accounts. They set it today. They look at it 2-3 years from now and make an adjustment, or they make an adjustment when they think they need to make an adjustment. Well, what you think is probably not the best thing to be doing because you don't have access to all of the resources. So all of a sudden, stock market downturns happen. You go from 100,000 down to just say 750. We're going to say a 25% decrease because we just had that drop in 2021 and 22. Right. There was a 25% decrease in the market in 21 and 22 before the market came back up in 23 and 24. So you went from $1 million to 750. Now what we got to think is, did that 5% that you were pulling change? 5% of 750 ain't the same as 5% of $1 million. So all of a sudden, your income has now been decreased. And people say, well, no, I'm going to get it back. It's in the market. It's going to come back. Yes, the market did come back in 23 and 24 and make back up those losses. You can't make back up that time, but also you pulling out 5%, right? So if I'm pulling out 5%, it's going to take me even longer to try to make up what I lost because I'm trying to fill up a bucket with a hole in it. I can't make that money back up because I'm pulling out. It's not just sitting. It's a difference if the money just sitting. I'm still going to work another couple of years.
Compound interest.
Exactly. But if I'm pulling out, ain't in the compound. So if I lost 25% and pulled out 5%, that's a 30% decrease in 1 year. Then the next year the market was negative in 22. I put out another 5%. So that's what? 35%. So that's a 35% loss in a matter of 2 years time frame. And all of a sudden, that's changed what I can actually live on
Mm-hmm.
and what I have to take care of my family. So in the blink of an eye, the legacy planning has been affected
Mm-hmm.
by the income planning, which also is affecting the tax planning. But the one thing that don't change along the way
Okay.
is our bills. So even though my income that I'm supposed to be taking reduced, what happens is I got to take more than that 5% because I still got bills I got to pay. Because guess what? The Alabama Power don't give you a reduction if you lose money in your 401k. So you got to have proper income planning, proper tax planning, which leads to proper legacy planning, where we can leave an inheritance to our children's children. See you back in a minute. Welcome back to Closing the Gap, the Truth About Black Wealth. Of course, I'm your host, Mr. Wilbert Hamilton, here with my co-host and the extraordinaire brother Eddie Richardson. It's been a wonderful day today, and I'm so happy to have you here on V94.9 WATV, and of course, everywhere you're tuning in on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere you consume your podcast content. Continue to like, share, and subscribe. You know, we do this for you. We need you. We're trying to impact. We're trying to change. We're trying to educate. To hopefully, enlighten and evoke action. At the end of the day, I tell people all the time, I want to be a conduit of change. I believe in being the change that you want to see. So anybody that comes under the sound of our voice, we want you to receive this information, but we want you to take action more than anything else. We want you to be in a better situation because of some of the information that you've heard, even if it makes you just question where you are, to start doing a self-checking evaluation. We all have to do that. I do that every year. Brother Richardson does it every year. We talked about planning at the beginning of the year, and we do assessments all along the year. So everybody needs some accountability. So we're here to help be your accountability partner and bring you some information and trying to hopefully, of course, change and help and build and grow the wealth in the African-American community. So, we're going to continue diving into this thing today. And I want to kind of, talk to you a little bit more, Brother Richardson. And, I always lead the church in my life. I believe, of course, the Lord is the foundation, is the key component. He is the missing piece, to anything being successful and everything being successful. And if you got him, you already on the right track. So I don't care if you know about money or not. I don't care if you understand what's going on in the word of the day or not. But if you got Christ at the center of everything you do, he'll lead you. He'll direct the path. So we want to make sure that, we continue to give those positive affirmations, and, we make sure that you know God. And we want you to know that he knows you, and because he's going to help to ensure your plan is successful in whatever area of life it may be. You need him at the center of it. So, Brother Richardson, we've talked a lot about, of course, planning and preparation, and how to ensure your plan, and what are some things to do. But, from a biblical perspective, how can we make sure we are God-centered, along this process of trying to make ourselves better and our families better on a day-to-day basis?
Man, that's a good question, man. And based on all that we've talked about thus far in this episode today, securing our success, we need to first of all realize that God knows who we are.
Absolutely.
Right. We've been talking about planning, setting a plan, income tax planning, estate planning, legacy planning, retirement plan, how to have a successful retirement plan. First and foremost, you need to understand who has already made a plan for you. That when God told Jeremiah in Jeremiah 29:11, "For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, says the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end." When you think about that and you encompass that, okay, yes, God was talking to Jeremiah, but God made all of us, right? It's not by happenstance that we are here, that God has a purpose for each and every person that is alive. And if God knows us, then God thinks about us. There's not one thing that God has ever made that God doesn't think about. Right? Scripture talks about he clothes the lilies of the field. They don't have to toil, that everything in the world operates in sync, that they're able to eat, be taken care of, the wind blows the direction that God wants it to blow. The rain falls down in the places that God desires for it to fall. And when you look at the order of the world and see how God has orchestrated everything, we need to have the blessed assurance that God thinks about us. That's the first thing I want everybody to think about, is that when you are making your own plans, setting things in place, getting ready to secure your finances in different ways, and this climate in society of the world has you scared or has you thinking bad thoughts, you need to first of all say, okay, God knows who I am. God is thinking about me. God has good thoughts that God is thinking about me, and God desires to give me peace and not evil. And there's a lot of evil that's going on in the world today. You know, when you watch the news, it can cause discouragement. You can see killings everywhere. You can see wars in different nations, and also right now with our current presidential administration, we see so many different layoffs and stories of people not knowing if when they get up in the morning, if they're going to even have a job. They're afraid to even open their emails because they don't know if Elon Musk has sent them an email or if whoever is the director over the divisions that they work in for the government, what's going to happen. You know, I have some clients that work for the Social Security Administration. You know, and they don't know what's going to go on there. Are we going to have a government shutdown, or are they going to cut back on the jobs that are there, right? They don't know what divisions are going to be reduced. We see a reduction in so many different things with the feds right now, and different people work for the federal government in various different offices. And as they think about those things, I want everybody to know that God still sees you. God is thinking about you. And you have to wake up every day and remind yourself that no matter what goes on, God knows me. And that's what will help give me peace, is that God desires to give me peace, that God sees the evil that comes about, but God has an expected end for me, that I may go through a challenge, but the assurance is that I have God with me through the challenge.
Yeah.
Right.
It's all things work together for good that those who love the Lord and called according to his purpose. So, you know, I think we talked about last time, there's opportunities in the pain. You know, there's opportunities in the pain. And, you know, a lot of people are going through some painful situations right now. And, you know, we all know that nothing happens by chance. You know, like I said, God has strategically ordained and set in order all of our steps.
That's right.
And if that troubled situation has been placed in front of you, I've learned that you got to learn to smile in the face of adversity. You got to look and say, you know what? This is God challenging me right now. He's testing me right now. You know, right now is when I got to get on my knees and pray to him more than I ever have, because he's seeing right now, if I'm going to be ready to go where he's trying to take me, he may be saying, look here, I ain't want you working that federal job no way. I gave you a gift and a talent, a skill set that you know you got that you ain't utilizing for my glory. I need you to go ahead and lean into me right now and trust that I'm going to open up a window and pour you out a blessing you won't have room enough to receive. But like you said, you got to know him. You got to trust in him. You got to believe in him. You got to cultivate that relationship in him. So doing those things will help give you strength. We're not saying it's going to be easy. We're not saying it's not going to be challenging. We're not saying it's not going to be tough, because it is. And anybody that tells you it's not is telling you a lie. And we have a lot of those pastors, preachers, you know, prophets, so to speak, that's professing all these blessings and talk to you about the gifts that God is going to give you in the house and the car and the prosperity preaching and everything. And, you know, I tell people like this, look here, y'all realize the devil can bless you too, right? The devil can give you worldly gifts. Because those worldly gifts, if they keeping you trapped in the same negative behavior, if it's keeping you trapped in the same environment that won't allow you to grow and develop your relationship with Christ, then guess what? That's the devil. That ain't of God. Because anything that God gives, it's not going to just be beneficial for you, but it's going to be of benefit and value for somebody else. God don't give no blessings that's only good for one person. anything that God has ever given, it's been beneficial for that individual and for the people around that individual. So for me, that's kind of how I look at,
Yeah.
where do the blessings come from? Because I see a lot of people, man, the Lord blessed me with a new car, but you can't afford the car you got. You're behind on your mortgage. You ain't saving for retirement. You ain't putting nothing away for your kids' college education, but you just got a new car. And you want to tell me God bless you with that new car? No. That's the devil keeping you entrapped in the same mindset that is keeping you stuck and not allowing you to grow and be who you designed to be. You got to be willing to take a step back from how the world sees things to be willing to let God show you how you supposed to see things.
That's right. So when you think about that, Will, as with part of what you just shared, and God pouring you out blessing that you don't have room enough to receive, that's that expected end that God has, and that expected end that God has, we have to continue to trust in Him for it. Don't get off track and start blessing ourselves and thinking just because we have some substance that's a blessing from God, because sometimes the blessing that God pours you out that you don't have room enough to receive is really just an abundance of peace. And it's not even anything substantive physically. It's not cars, it's not houses, but it's the trust in Him. Right? It's the fact that knowing that the blessing that I don't have room enough to receive is the fact that I serve a God that is so big that God can consume all of my existence, that God can fill a room with His presence to the point that I don't even want anything else physically, right? Just the fact that God is there with me gives me that blessed assurance that everything will be okay.
Yes.
Right? That so I can rest in that. And so when we go into planning, how to ensure that our plan succeeds is to know that God is with us. God thinks about us. But then secondly, I would say that when we've been talking about planning, and you just said how, Satan can come and make you feel like you've got a blessing from God because you got a new house or a new car. You need to realize that you need to trust God in the plan and not lean to your own understanding.
Absolutely.
I think that's what happens when you said that we lean to our own understanding when we do certain things. We think that, okay, yeah, I want a new car. Well, did you really pray and ask God for that vehicle? Did you really do the diligence of going and getting with a financial advisor to lay out a plan? How much did you pray and really seek the face of God about it?
Exactly.
And allow God to come back and communicate that to you before you went out and made the move. You see what I'm saying? Because Satan comes to steal, kill, and destroy, right? And sometimes Satan will allow you to go and make a decision, like you said earlier, of Satan can bless you because Satan deceives you that you've been blessed, right? It's not so much that Satan blesses you, it's the deception that, okay, hey, you tell yourself, oh, I deserve that. I work hard.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I make all this money, then I should be able to have, what I want. Right? Well, not necessarily. Right? The thing is, did you put together a plan for what it is that you want? See, did you sit down and count the costs and ask the Lord and trust in Him for the plan? Because if you write down a plan and you want a new vehicle, because case in point, man, I've been wanting a new car for a while. Right? I've looked at them, looked at different ones. I won't say which ones I've been looking at. But man, when I look at it and I look at everything that I say, man, okay, yeah, I make enough money that I could pay for that vehicle. I could pay for the gas. I could pay for the insurance. But then when I go back and I look at my financial plan and I look at my business plans, it doesn't align with that right now, right? Because I made some investments in some things that I'm waiting on a return. And so in order for me to be able to be comfortable in taking care of those things, in taking care of my household, a new vehicle doesn't fit in. So whenever I think about it, I don't lean to my own understanding. I go to God. And as Proverbs 3, chapter 3, 5, and 6 says, trust in the Lord with all thy heart, lean not to thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your path. So see, when I think about that new car, right, I go and I say, okay, yeah, I got the money, I can do it. Then I go talk to God about it. Right? Then I go talk to God, and then he direct my path. Has that been directed my path away from getting that new vehicle right now? Right. Which is the same thing that you do as a financial advisor. Okay, hey, you got in your mind what you want to do. You want to put together a plan. Okay, you put it together now. Come see the financial advisor, right? And then let's see which way you need to go. So how do we ensure that our plans succeed? First of all, positive affirmation, realize that God knows who you are. Second of all, trust God in the plan. Don't lean to your own understanding. But then next, once you have that plan, you have to stay committed. Woo. You got to stay committed. Commitment is a hard thing.
Yeah.
It's a hard thing.
Yeah. I mean, being committed, it takes discipline.
Mm-hmm.
It takes, it takes effort. It takes work. It's so easy to be undisciplined. I had a teacher one time when I was, in elementary school. She said, well, it's hard to be good. It's easy to be bad. You think about it, it's real easy to act up in school when you're a kid, to talk too much and have fun and play and run in the hall and just do whatever you want to do. Mm-hmm. It's hard to sit there when you get that urge to want to go do what your friends are doing, when they having fun and joking, and you're supposed to sit there and be quiet. It's hard to sit on them hands sometimes. But that's the discipline and the commitment that we got to have in order to be successful. So, I'm reminded myself, I got to go talk to my financial advisor, my wife, before I ask her, can I get a new car? So, I have to do that same self-checking evaluation. And we all need to have that because that helps us when we're connected to God, you're connected to your spouse, and you're on the same page. You get that reassurance that you're not in it alone. You know you got somebody that supports you and that's there for you and wants the best for you. And God only wants the best for us. We just got to be comfortable enough to understand and be okay when he say no sometimes. Yeah. And he gonna say no, but when he says no, you have to flip that thing on his head and understand that he's saying yes to something bigger. So I look at it and say, if the Lord is saying, if he's saying no to the Mercedes, he's saying yes to the Rolls Royce. It's just going to be down the road. It might not be the Rolls Royce today, but it's going to be a Rolls Royce in a year or 2 years. So just be comfortable in the no.
Right.
So learning to be comfortable in the no and waiting until you get that big yes.
Yeah, because that goes to what you stated earlier about, okay, you have a retirement plan and you got $1 million and then now you start taking 4 to 5% out after you retire, right? You don't want a hole in the bucket. You see what I'm saying? Because the market is going to do certain things and then inflation is always present too.
Absolutely.
And the person that knows that the best is God. God sees these things and knows these things already. And so that's why when we make all of our plans, we have to know that God knows us, trust God in the plan, and stay committed to seeking him in each step of the way. That no matter what is going on, we commit our works to the Lord, and then our thoughts will be established. Our work will be well because we are trusting God in all things and at all times. We don't deviate from that. We stay disciplined in that. And as you stated, discipline is a hard thing. And that's why we are intentional and want our listeners to understand that we are intentionally all this year so far talking about the plan, talking about seeking the right advice because you need to stay on it. And what we want you to understand is that you're going to hear a lot of things. You're going to have some things that will discourage you, but we want you to know if you had a plan and you trust God, that you don't have to be careful for anything, but in everything, just pray and give thanks to God and let your requests be known, and he will reduce your anxiety. He will calm your fears. It's okay to be afraid, but you just need to know what to do in the midst of your fear. Know that God will help your plans be successful as long as you continue to trust in him and seek him in all you do. And we're going to close there, and we want to see you next time.
Absolutely.